while Bruce is red hot up here, we're going to start a panel session. We've got two local appropriate people to be joining Bruce on the stage today. The first one is Ella Bancroft. She's a descendant of the peoples of the Bunurong Nation and peoples of England, Poland and Scotland. Australian-born artist, storyteller, mentor and founder of the totally carbon-neutral event, The Returning, and the We Collective. Ella is a pioneer for the decolonisation movement. Through her writing and work, Ella's been providing rewilding, the rise of the female energy as a way back to deep relationship with nature and decolonising of personal, social and ecological well-being for 10 years. She's widely respected among her community and believes in local communities with local economies as a way to provide hope for the health of our planet and people. Ella, can you join us? And Damon Gameau, well-known filmmaker, producer, director, most recent production 2040, which is gaining wider and wider acclaim and coverage across the globe. He's got lots of amazing projects in the pipeline, some of which you may hear about this afternoon, but thrilled to have Damon as another panellist. Damon? Should I sit down? Yes. I feel like a school teacher. Okay, I'll sit down. Everyone got their own mics? Oh, it's going to be fun. No wonder you sat down the first time, Bruce. Ella, I'm going to start with you, if I may. What do you think the hurdles that we could be facing between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in the creating of regenerative and sustainable food systems, specifically in the Northern Rivers?
I love it when they let women go first. I guess for me, it's important to recognise that up here in the Northern Rivers, as we all know, our community has changed a lot in the last 20 plus years, but there is a severe amount of gentrification, and because of that, we often find that land is very inaccessible for mob to be able to buy, to be able to reclaim so that they can work the lands again. So for that is probably one of the biggest hurdles I see. Personally, I'm 32 years old and have no ability to be able to buy land, even though I have studied horticulture, rewilding, and want to work land the best that I can to produce food through diverse gardens and agroforestry. But unfortunately, a lot of my generation are unable to do that, and if we're Indigenous and in my generation, we're even less likely to be able to do that. So for me, it's about trying to figure out how we can move away from this capitalist system and structure of owning land, which has got us in this position in the first place, which is a hierarchical system that dominates and states that we somehow are here to use and abuse the earth rather than show up as true custodians. And as a descendant of the Bunurong people, and I recognise a lot of other Aboriginal people here today, our elders, our old people did not fight for land. They understood that it took community to be able to work the land together to produce, and human contact is essential for us to be able to find healing with the earth again. We have to get our hands back in the soil. We have to start working as a team, and we have to move forward and away from these I mentalities and more into the we mentality so that we can actually build a better future for the next generation.
Damon, do you want to add anything to Ella's answer?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say we have an enormous opportunity up here to, you just have to drive around and see how much available land there is. And we know that a lot of people have moved up here recently that don't necessarily have farming as in the forefront of their minds, that there is available land. So I know even there's a few people here today that have started operations, small-scale farms on some of this existing land, and what we haven't got right yet is the tenure arrangement, so that the landowner doesn't leave after 5 years or say, actually, you know what, I want you off this land. So I'd love to think that up here we could develop some governance that allows these young people to come on the land, use that land, but make sure they have security for all their hard work. So I'm not sure how we work that out, but I do think we should be doing much better than we are in terms of food production. And that moving forward, as we see effects of climate change and other factors, you know, you think about how much the Murray-Darling Basin is going to be impacted, that people are going to look to us in 10 years, if they're not starting to already, to grow and produce far more food than we are. And that doesn't mean more and more rows of just single crop, you know, macadamias. That's like actually bringing diversity to this region, and this opportunity that Bruce is talking about, and Ella, I just think is such a gift. You know, we should be doing it in this area. You know, let's promote these bush foods. Let's get these people on the land. And as Bruce said, I think the most telling stat is if in the burgeoning bush food industry, Aboriginal people make up 1% of that industry. Now that is a catastrophic failing. You know, so we've got to do much better. So if we are going to offer up this land, let's make sure that it's evenly distributed and there are Aboriginal people working on that land.
Well, I've got you, Damon. Do you share Bruce's optimism?
I do. I mean, one of the projects I'm doing at the moment is it's been a listening exercise for the last 8 months around the country called Regenerative Australia, and we've spoken to a range of different Australians, like thousands of people in bushfire communities, urban areas. And there are just these common themes coming through. As Bruce alluded to, we are in this, the mood is ripe for change. And what sort of knocked me off my chair were these conservative farmers talking about the desperation of greener hills again and flowing clean waters. But also, like a president of a gun club in rural New South Wales said to me, we've got to listen to the Aboriginals. Like, we've got to start listening to these people because they know how to work the land. We need their governance, we need all sorts of their wisdom. So if you did a search of all the transcriptions of what we did the interviews, the one word that came up was community. That was what everyone wanted. They were sick of decisions being made from a government a long way away. They were sick of decisions being made from a transnational corporation. They wanted ownership, governance, food sovereignty, energy sovereignty in their region. And we have all the resources and technology to do that now. So I hope that, you know, this vision we're putting together of Australia in 2030 is these small empowered communities like cells in a body that connect together to make a larger, healthier organism. And blow me down if that's not exactly what our First Nations people had. Hundreds of nations across this country all agreeing to a nature law to actually move forward. So it's all right there. All this wisdom is waiting for us. We've just got to take off the blindfold and listen to it.
And the news is pretty good, isn't it? I mean, the outcomes are good on so many different levels. As you say, you know, technology's there, the plants are there, you know, the
there's
systems.
a story we did last week, actually, about this farm in Victoria. I'll be really quick. They've got rid of all the predators. They've fenced off the area and got rid of the cats and the introduced species. And they have brought back these bandicoots, quolls, batongs, all these native animals again. And they're on the land and they're finding that the bandicoots are interacting with the seeds and the grasses, and they're discovering these grasses that they've never seen before. All these biologists are going out there and saying, we don't even know what that is. But there's the kangaroo grasses, wallaby grasses. Like, this is what happens when those animals that evolve with this land get back on the land again. And to stand amongst that field or go out at night with a torch when you're not used to seeing rabbits growing up and just seeing these spotted quolls jumping around, it was magic, you know, and I felt really emotional, and that was the hope for me. This is what regeneration looks like, and people have already started doing it.
And Bruce, it's often a matter of sort of stopping doing a whole lot of stuff, isn't it? You know, from a farming, sort of a land management point of view, you know, it's not as though we've got to take on a whole lot of, you know, yes, take on the wisdom, but in terms of the practices and the change, you know, a lot of the time, and I've found as a regenerative farmer, stopping doing a whole lot of stuff and stepping away has been the best thing I've ever done.
Well, continuing to do what you know will fail isn't the smartest thing you can do. So a lot of farmers, you know, farmers are being blamed for being redneck fools, but In fact, many farmers have an intimate connection with their land, but have been coerced into a kind of relationship with that land which is destroying soil. So many farmers, under duress, are finding that their better relationship with the land makes better profits. And there's an example of a grain farmer, central New South Wales, who was completely burnt out, lost his house, lost all his machinery sheds, and his crops. He had nothing. If he wanted to stay on that land, he had to come up with a different answer. He looked around, and the only thing he had left, because soon after the fires it rained, I've had direct experience of this myself, and a crop of grass came up that he hadn't seen for a very long time. It was kangaroo grass. And so he harvested that grass. He borrowed a harvester, borrowed a tractor, harvested the grass and sold it to the roads department, who then sowed it on the roadsides to help bed soil down, stop erosion. And he hasn't stopped doing it. And he's made more money out of that than ever before. But these things are possible to us. And I'm starting to talk about economies now. My sister talked about capitalism before, and it's a brave thing to do in this world. But we know that capitalism, because it's so resource heavy, is the catalyst for us being in the position of destroying the world for the first time in human existence. So if that is the driver of this cataclysmic change, then we ought to change the driver. And we can change the driver without chucking the baby out with the bathwater. We can adjust it. Talking about private land ownership is a really salient point, but I'll give you an example of how we can change. When we developed the first tractors with GPS that could drive in a straight line on their own all night, all the farmers in the Wimmera in Victoria pulled down their fences because they could harvest their crops of wheat using one tractor which drove 24 hours a day. They pulled down their fences. So it was as if private property didn't exist. We've already talked about cattle and sheep. This is a very long answer to a very short question, but that's what you get.
Bruce, do it.
If we moved away from cattle and sheep and ate kangaroos and emus, for instance, now a lot of people say that you can't farm kangaroos because they bounce. Now we can send people to the moon for a holiday. Elon Musk is doing it, but we can't control an animal that goes bounce. I think if we turned our minds to it, we'd find a way, because the old people did have a way, because they walked behind those kangaroos and drove them into an ever-narrowing gap, didn't panic the animals so that they didn't bounce too much, and culled young male kangaroos. This was a droving and farming exercise that was accommodated to the ability of the kangaroo to bounce. And we're all grazing kangaroos. I'm grazing them at the moment. I'm not supposed to shoot them because they're a protected animal, but occasionally I do. And they're a great source of protein. They're virtually fat-free. And they are a gorgeous animal. One of the things that affects my heart more than anything is to see a mob of kangaroos asleep on the grass in front of my house, and to see the tenderness of the mother to the joey. It's very affecting. But a baby lamb is a cute animal too. A newborn calf is a very cute animal. So cuteness isn't the thing which determines what we kill. It's our mindset. And our mindset needs to change. We can change a lot about our economy. We're capable of it. I think we're on the brink of doing it.
I always bang on Bruce about saying that the first paddock you got to change is the one between your ears. And I, for a reason, because that's the first paddock I changed. I had to, and it worked. Because and there were a few things I didn't. There were a few paddock changes I did make out in the paddock, and they didn't go so well. Because the tools in the hands of a ignorant or ill-equipped person can be very dangerous in terms of grazing management.